Hello and welcome to this week's Stocks to Watch for trading and investing from AlphaWolfTrading.com. I'm Tim. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. Uh, I think it's going to be an interesting week ahead. We had some stuff happen over in Syria this weekend that could impact the markets come Monday. We've got earnings season, which is starting to kick into full gear. Starting on Monday, got some names that definitely want to keep an eye on this week. A few sectors that I think are definitely worth watching are biotech and the financials, of course, as we get earnings out of more financials. We got industrial at the end of the week with Honeywell and GE. Aerospace defense, I think that's fairly self explanatory because of what's going on over there in Syria. Cannabis, 420 week ahead. 420 is kind of a special day. We've got also GWPH is expected to, I think, announce some results this week from one of their studies. Energy, which oil has been, very strong recently. I think that's a sector that we continue to keep an eye on. Tech, you got Netflix reporting after the close on Monday. Biotech, we've got a fairly decent event happening in the biotech space. I think it was either happening this weekend or first part of next week. So lots of different stuff to keep an eye on. As always, if the markets continue to weaken, then we've got TVX, TVIX, UVXY, TZA, gold, JNUG, Nugget. Keep an eye on those for potential short-term trading opportunities if we see some real weakness out there and some fear. So that's a little rundown. Let's take a look and see what the markets are looking like. We still have some caution flags out there. S&P 500 struggling below the 50-day moving average. We've got a short-term trend line to contend with as well. Nasdaq, which has been struggling. Take a look at that one real quick. Right, the same thing, having a little bit of difficulty there at the 50 EMA. IBB, let's take a look at that real quick here. Biotechs, right below the 50-day, actually having trouble with the 20-day moving average on the IBB. We've got the IWM pulling back, actually sitting on top of the 50-day. But still, we've got caution flags, right? We're dealing with the short-term downward trend. Let's take a look at SMH. Uh, Having difficulty with the 50-day moving average, approaching overbought. So this could be a very interesting week ahead. Let's take a look at aerospace and defense, right? Potential flat top breakout here on aerospace defense. Energy, like I said, a sector that's been pretty hot. Oil rising. I think energy, there are several energy names that still haven't played catch up yet to oil. Financials, even after decent earnings, we saw a pullback in financials on Friday. Industrials, it's going to be a big week towards the end of the week here. Let's see. Let's see. I think we want to keep an eye on USO, which just took out this area of price resistance, right? We had a little flat top breakout there on USO. So overall, in general, we've got in a lot of the sectors and indexes out there, we still have some caution flags out there. But I think earnings season could help set the tone. And I don't expect, unless something more significant starts happening with Syria and Russia and Iran and all this stuff, I don't expect that is going to, even if we get some kind of a pullback there I don't expect that that's going to last that long. Could be wrong, but I think the primary focus is going to be on earnings and earnings season. So we'll have to see what happens next week. But let's go ahead and get started with a list of stocks to watch for next week. TRTC, recent reverse split, marijuana, cannabis play. Had it did the reverse split and actually pulled back fairly significantly. And now we've started to see a bit of a bounce. This thing got down to about $2.20. It's broken back over the $3 holler, closed over the 20-day. Decent volume on Friday. Looking for a potential red to green on this. And maybe we get it back up and test this 350 area, 360 area. To get up and test this longer term trend line, we're looking somewhere around $4. Get a $4 holler. Take that out, and potentially we get a pop into the $4.85 range. So smaller float because of the reverse split sector that I think is going to be in play next week. It's worth keeping an eye on for a short-term trading opportunity. Could be a day trade, could be a short-term swing. ISNS, nice action on Friday. Now, not a lot of volume, 168,000 shares traded hands, but this has only got 4.9 million shares in the float. Now, I don't know what the news was that made it pop on Friday, but it had a big gap up and then consolidated, nice tight candles right there around the 20-day moving average, flirting with a potential $5 holla. Love those round number rolls. And if we back this out to the weekly time frame, this is a pretty big spot that it's dealing with here. It's had a couple of attempts where it's tried to pop through and wound up getting back below. But look at where it's at now. It's above the 200-week moving average. It was consolidating nicely in a weekly time frame. Got a little bit of a pop on Friday. I think this one is worth keeping an eye on for potential red to green move continuation. Now, it's likely going to have some resistance. Let me go back to this weekly chart here. Just looking at this longer term trend line, and it's likely going to have some resistance in that area, which actually puts it right around $5. So, ideally, maybe what we look for here is a pullback to say 425, somewhere in that area. See if that holds as support for a little bounce. Maybe we don't get a pull all the way back to 425. Maybe you get a pull back to $4.50, 447, 445, somewhere in that area. Look for that to hold as an area for a bounce. And look at it as a day trade opportunity. You want to make sure you've got some volume, so you've got some liquidity to be able to get in and out of this trade. But I like the action on it on Friday. And look, if it takes out $5 with some authority, it's a big area for this to take out, and you could get a pretty nice little pop out of that. So worth keeping an eye on. ISNS. AEHR. This was on the list of stocks to watch last week, and it was grinding on all day Friday. Semiconductor name. I like this one for a swing or long-term hold consideration. It's a company that's kind of a turnaround play. I think they're on the right path. Listen to their conference call from their last earnings report. And it actually managed to break above this trend line on Friday. So it's flirting with the 100 EMA. Maybe you look for a red to green on this one. Pull back to $2.50 or so. Like I said, I am looking at this as more of a swing or long-term hold consideration. Nice action on Friday with some decent volume. 254,000 shares trading hands. Only has 18 million shares in the float. So watching for some follow through on that one. PXLW. So I can't remember who came out on this one on, I think it was Friday, and gave it an upgrade. It's flirting with the 50-day moving average. It's also flirting with potential price resistance. Now this one's a little overbought, okay, but things can stay overbought. Had good volume on Friday. Maybe you look for a pullback to the $4 area as potential support. A pullback to 4 could be a very interesting entry on this. And I'm actually looking at this one as more of a swing or long-term hold as well. They just announced a deal with Xiaomi, which is the big a fifth largest cell phone manufacturer in the world, and very interesting play here. So it's worth keeping an eye on PXLW. Now they may have earnings coming up. Remember, earnings season starting. Worth keeping an eye on this one. What I like about it is the fact that it has pulled back to this trend line and bounced, right? So it's below the 200 day, and you got a death cross. You got the 50, the cross below the 200 day. I'm not crazy about that. Um, so maybe you look for this to pull back to 4 or even the 350 area, test the support. That could be an interesting spot to take PXLW, but I like this one maybe for a short-term swing, maybe for a long-term hold, maybe you build out a position in this one, or if you get some real volume, it could just be a day trading scalp opportunity because of the fact it's only got 28 million shares in the float. So PXLW actually has my attention from different types of trades, but I like the setup on it. I think it's worth watching next week. LGCY. So this one was has been on my radar because of some 10% owner purchases. It's a pretty significant amount. It's an oil and gas energy name. Got a great look on the daily. Potentially looking to take out this little pattern that it's developed here. Let's take a look at this one on the weekly time frame. So this is this has been a pretty beaten up name, and it's looking at coming up into the 200-week moving average, somewhere around $6.70 or so. Maybe you look for a red to green on this one as well. Pull back to say $4.75 as an entry. Could be a swing. The inside of the 10% buys, I believe we've seen them in the $4 range, 3 and change range, but this one's got a really, really good looking setup on the daily. And if oil, at least, even if oil just stays where it's at, doesn't necessarily continue to climb, I think this one is definitely worth keeping an eye on for a trading opportunity. HMNY. So this was on last week's stocks to watch list. Full disclosure, myself and some of the members over here at Alpha Wolf Trading took positions in HMNY last week. And we're already up a little bit on the position. Nice article came out this weekend on HMNY. Worth the read. Actually, I posted several articles about HMNY in the chat room for the pro members at Alpha Wolf Trading. But my feeling is that this stock is at the point where the risk reward is pretty favorable. So this could be a short-term swing, could be a day trade because there is a huge short interest in this name. I think about 70% short interest. So it could be a day trading opportunity. You got a little peek of what one really good headline could do for this stock on Friday. It popped and halted. I mean, I think this one is definitely worth at least having on your radar. Like I said, could be a day trading opportunity, short-term swing. And the article on Seeking Alpha actually was more of like a long-term lotto investment, right? Kind of comparing HMNY to Netflix and a couple other names. I thought it was a pretty well-written article and one to consider. So definitely worth keeping this on your radar for a potential opportunity next week. WKHS. So, this one has been bouncing really between 250 and 330 pretty consistently, right? And you've been basing out here a little bit, right over 230. And on Friday, stochastic curled up a little bit. Got a little break over this short-term trend line. Let's see, what did volume do? Not a tremendous amount of volume, about 100,000 shares, but been waiting for a decent headline on this one. Maybe potential news of United States Postal Service contract. I'm not saying that they're going to get it, but I know that they have submitted a vehicle for that potential contract. So I just like the fact that it broke over this trend line on Friday. maybe a red to green move, some volume. Could be a day trading opportunity there. High risk swing. I do believe that these guys need to raise capital, but they're also looking at spinning off their horsefly, or not horsefly, surefly helicopter division in an IPO. So, who knows what exactly is going to happen with this WKHS, but it is got a pretty compelling look for a little short-term trading opportunity. ZYNE, it's a cannabis play. It's been kind of grinding. It managed to close above the 50-day moving average on Friday. We're kind of testing this trend line here, this longer-term trend line. GWPH, if they wind up having positive results this week, this one could move in sympathy with GWPH. It could just move because of, last week, towards the end of the week, the whole pot space had a little bit of a pop. You got Mitch McConnell was doing, proposing some hemp legislation for hemp farmers, and so we've got some things that are happening next week. John Boehner came out last week, and he's looking to try and get medical marijuana passed, or new legislation out on medical marijuana. So a lot of stuff happening in the space. This one is worth keeping an eye on. Potential day trade, only 11 million shares in the float. Worth keeping an eye on this one for a trading opportunity. IPI, Intrepid Potash, a little bit of a pop on Friday, testing the $4 holla. I love round number rolls. It looks as though 350, 325 has been kind of holding up as support for IPI. This is more probably, this could be a day trade if you get some real volume. Probably more of a swing though. It is overbought. Maybe you look for a pullback into the 375, 350 area. That could be a spot to take it for a swing entry. SENS was on the list a couple of weeks ago. Had a nice pop, got out of the upper Bollinger Band. It's working its way back into the Bollinger Band on lower volume. Maybe we look for a little trend line break here. 350, 360 could be the interesting spot for this one. If it actually pulls all the way back to 330, that would be even more ideal, right? We pull back, we test the 20-day moving average, we test this former price resistance as support for a bounce. Day trading opportunity, 64.7 million shares in the float. Could be a day trading opportunity, could be a short-term swing. I like the fact that it's above all of the moving averages. You've got the 50-day, which is sloping higher. You've got the 200-day, which is sloping higher. It's a pretty good-looking setup on SENS, and I think it's worth having on the radar. CPRT, one of the pro members brought this one up on Friday, and I got to tell you, it's a hot-looking chart right here. Nice consolidation right around the $50 mark, 51 bucks. Takes out 51 with some conviction. I believe, let me back this out and make sure. Yeah, this is all-time highs in this stock. It's flirting with blue skies. I mean, this has just got a really, really good looking setup on the weekly, on the daily. Worth keeping an eye on this one, potentially for a long-term hold play or a swing type play. Don't know when these guys have earnings. You got to look that up. But beautiful setup on the daily. Maybe a pullback to the 50-day, 48 and change. Could be an interesting spot to take it. It does look as though stochastic's starting to curl down a little bit. But pretty hot looking setup here as it flirts with all-time highs. Fuel cell. This one popped right up into potential price resistance, $2, $2.10. Right, there is some price resistance in this area. It keeps attempting to take that out, and it's pulling back on lower volume after this attempt. Now, looking for this to pull back into, say, the 185 area, 180 area, see if that holds a support for a bounce. Energy space, right? Energy space And it had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 day run. Let's see it pull back 3 or 4 days, test this area of support, and then potentially get a bounce. 77 million shares in the float, trading 1.3 million shares on Friday. So there's liquidity. Might need a little bit more time, but I think worth keeping an eye on for this week. ARQL, I believe, has a potential event happening, FDA event happening, I think this week. It has a pretty good looking setup on the daily time frame. Now, you know how it goes with these biotechs, right? If the event, if they do not meet primary endpoint or secondary endpoints, this thing could get crushed. If they do meet primary endpoint or secondary endpoints, this thing could rip, right? So 42 million shares in the float. You don't want to chase a big gap up. Make sure that you got to take a look at the finances to see if they're going to need to do a capital raise. But ARQL could be in play this week and worth having on the radar. Let's take back this up here, and 389 on the weekly time frame, $4, pretty big spot of potential resistance. Take that out, could get interesting on ARQL. MARK. So look, there's a big, I can't remember who, somebody came out with a short hit piece when this thing was up in the $14 range. Pretty effective hit piece because it's now pulled back to 5 and change, right? So there was an article out this weekend, Positive Seeking Alpha article. Now this does not have a great looking setup on the weekly, does not have a great looking setup on the daily, because it's in a pretty decent downtrend here recently, right? Decent article on Seeking Alpha. Not sure if it's going to have any effect. What's interesting to me about it is that it's sitting right here on the 200-day moving average, right? And this has got a fairly small float, 16.3 million shares in the float. If this thing were to start popping, it's had some pretty nice range for day trading opportunity, even short-term swings. So I think it's worth having on the radar for a potential trading opportunity. But I will say this, the hit piece that came out on this, there were some things that were concerning about this company. The article from Seeking Alpha really didn't address those things this weekend. Kind of just did a breakdown of the sum of the parts of the company. I think it's interesting for a day trade, short-term trade. Play this one size appropriate, okay? Don't try to hit a home run with this thing. You want to take a few hundred shares or whatever, knock yourself out. But don't try to go real big in this name. I think it's worth keeping an eye for a trading opportunity and maybe a high-risk lotto swing, but do not go big in that one. LUNA. So LUNA, I've been watching this consolidate for a long time. I was really interested in seeing this breakout to occur here. What actually pushed it were earnings. And I didn't want to take it ahead of earnings, and then I missed the breakout. But, it had a nice pop. It actually tagged $4. Pulling back now. I think as it gets back into this area, this could be an interesting swing or long-term hold consideration as it gets back into the 275, 250 area for potential support and bounce. Worth keeping an eye on. Could be a day trading opportunity as well. I mean, 24 million shares in the float. Traded 276,000 shares on Friday. But ideally, the more compelling place for me is in a pullback to 250, 275. I think that one could be interesting at that spot. All right, Bzun. We were watching this last week. It's pulling back. $44 has been kind of acting as support. I think you pull back to the 50-day could be pretty compelling. I would love it on a gap fill down to 38, $37. I would love the opportunity. If this were to pull back to the 200-day or fill that gap, I would look to start building a position for my long-term hold account. But we could just pull back to the 50-day and get a nice little bounce off of there. Uh, Definitely worth having on the radar. The other one is, Baba. I think Baba, which was weak on Friday, Baba gets down into the 165 area where it's bounced several times. Now, the more times you test an area, likely it is you're going to break that area. More likely it is you're going to wind up breaking it. Now, we could wind up breaking below 165, and there is a gap to fill on this one as well, down to about 160. Maybe we pull all the way back to 144 or so. I don't know, but I like Baba for a long-term hold consideration, and but it also has nice little short-term swing opportunities, day trading opportunities. Netflix reports next week after the close. That could be interesting for because that tends to have some range after. I mean, maybe they report great numbers and you get a pullback, right? And that gives you an opportunity for a little bounce play. So we're keeping an eye on that. GE, long-term hold consideration, reporting Friday. This could be the real kitchen sink. I mean, there was some news after the close on Friday that sounded like kitchen sink type quarter stuff. And, maybe this is the opportunity. If you get a big capitulation after earnings on Friday, that could create an opportunity, I think, for a long term hold um, position. And, you buy it when there's just max amount of capitulation happening, and you put it in your long term hold portfolio. In a couple of years, you look at it and think you'd be pretty happy with the results. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. All right, that is it. That's my list of stocks to watch. Last week I had the live chat trading room open all week long for non-members, everybody, and we had a great time last week. And I'm going to continue to do the open chat room on Free Friday. But thanks to anybody that stopped by, and I think that's it. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this, and let's see what next week brings. Good luck trading next week. Don't chase. Always have a plan, and I'll see you all next week. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.